Hello besties! So today I wanted to record a little ships tutorial because a lot of people are asking how to practice this effectively. First thing you're going to need when you load into the ship's checkpoint, Vesper of Radius, maybe some high recovery, that helps out too, triple dynamo, triple distribution, and then you want a Ember of Benevolence if you're with friends because you get your nade back faster, and Ember of Singeing as well because then when you Scorch with Heat Rises dive, you get your Phoenix dive back faster, and then everything else here pretty obvious. Okay, so let's go farm up my well. I'm probably going to speed this part up. Okay, and now I have my well, my wonderful well. So let's go back to the start of ships, and that will help me get ready to explain what I want to explain. Okay, so first things first, when it comes to practicing ships, make sure you practice from the start. Some people practice only half the transition, and then they get surprised when they fuck up the first half going up to cauldrons, and it ruins the rest of the transition because they're slow. So practice from the start, and also another thing, big thing, is practice the whole thing all the way through until you're confident, okay? So that means, you know, even if you fuck up, right? Even if you maybe fall off the map, or even if you're slow, or you fall off a pole or something like that, keep going. Practice from 0 to 100 all the way through until you're consistently getting through with the appropriate strats. Only after that should you practice maybe like rib practice. But a lot of people, when they're practicing ships, they say to me like, oh, you know, I hit a 55, or I hit a 56, or I hit whatever, and they hit it once, right? Listen, for runs specifically, unless you're submitting, you know, your ship's CP, or not your ship's CP, your ship's transition to like SRC or something for a competition, unless you are doing that, for runs, for full runs, I want you to hit a decent transition 95% of the time, instead of trying to hit a very good transition 1% of the time, or 5% of the time, or whatever it is. Consistency is king. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's talk about this transition from start to finish. So first, I have 100 mobility, I have T-steps, I got, you know, all this stuff, as usual. And yeah, I have Firebolt nade, and yeah, so let's talk about the transition. When you first go through the portal, do not eager through the portal, okay? You will hit your teammates, and you'll probably waste your eager going in a not middle direction. So what you want to do is just go through the portal and pull out your sword as you go through the portal, and then aim for the middle of this spike, right down the middle of the hallway. You just jump a little bit, and you instantly swipe, dash, and you kind of glide through right here. Okay, you can also land on the ground and then bounce skate off of that, but I usually just tell people to do what I just did because it's the simplest method and it doesn't really lose you any time. Okay, so now once you get here, you either go left or right. You can skate right, and then you skate forward, and then you have two options, right? Either you can kind of line straight through the middle right here, or you can do it on the left as well. Okay, so if you arrive here on time, right, you're not slow. If you're even a decent bit fast, the cauldrons will spawn in as you're lining across, or maybe slightly before you line across, and they will be in a position where you can line straight through from front to back. So let me show you that in just a second. And a lot of people who are having trouble on cauldrons, they're like, Aegis, you know, whenever I get there, you know, the cauldrons are already spawned in, and, you know, I just hit a chain or something like that. Well, the reason for that is because you're slow. Okay, so if you're fast, right, I'm not even going to do this insanely fast, right? I'm just going to go right, I'm going to go forward. Cauldrons aren't spawned in, I walk forward, and I just line. And look at that, right? The cauldrons are, there's a perfect gap through the cauldrons. Now, some of them might move quickly, but if you're fast enough, you'll go right through before they even start to move. Now, you can't control everything. Your teammate might hit you into a wall, or you might get unlucky and, you know, lose all your speed when you hit the ground or something. If that happens and you're slow to cauldrons, there's two things you can do. You can either wait until all the cauldrons have moved out of the way, and generally that will happen, and you can just line through, straight gap, you can wait a bit, or you can ego it a bit and look for a cauldron that you can line onto, or look for a gap between the chains that you can line into. But take your time, right? Better to take your time and make it 3 seconds late than to rib the transition and have everyone restart the raid. So remember, right, pro tip, if you only make it to the 3rd or 4th cauldron, you can line off of this circular disc on the cauldron, right? It's pretty easy to do. You just kind of, you know, let's say you make it onto this cauldron, and you know, it starts swinging this way, you can just line just like this, boom, and you're right through. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. Also, you can use your eager to swing back onto a cauldron if you get ejected off to the side because you hit a chain or something like that. Okay, so normally what I do when I get to this part of the transition is I pull out my sword, I have eager again, and you either swipe left or right. Okay, left and right have basically the same route, so I'm just going to show off left because left is a little bit harder. So when you go to left, right, you're going to end up over here, and you see this gap. The reason why left is harder is because that wall is right there. If you try to line straight through from here, you're going to hit the wall. So you want to be a little bit on the left side of this gap, and you want to aim more toward the right. And when you well line here, do not well line for height. If you well line for height, you're going to hit your head and possibly be sent down. right? So you want to activate your glide basically, let me try to draw this, right? Instead of activating your glide right away so that you go like upward, you want to activate your glide like here so that you go forward, or maybe slightly down, okay? So I hope that makes sense. Another thing you can do here is if you notice a lot of people on left side, some people also like to go on top of the ship, you know, maybe use a dash here and then line here, which is a lot more like, you know, open air, right? A lot easier to do. So that's also an option as well. Don't forget to consider that. And now when you get to this portico load zone, right, whether you're left or right side, right, there's a couple things you can do. On left side, you can either take one of these poles, right? If you take one of these poles, you have to line for a lot of distance, so you have to be a little bit cautious, right? You have to be good at kind of balancing your heat rises and, you know, making sure that you don't slow down too much. Or if you're on right side, you can take this pole right here, and that's also an option as well. Now, of course, the one thing that I didn't mention is the ship line. The ship line is, of course, very popular. So what the ship line entails is, let me kind of go back here so I can show this off, right? So I'm going to go backward. We're just going to go all the way through here. And so if you want to line off the ship, the best way to do that is to just line through here, right? And allow your feet to touch the ground here for a second, double tap jump, and then do this, sword, dash, and then you land on the ship. Okay, if the ship isn't spawned in yet, you have a couple options. You can either float here, or you can stand on the ship kind of launchers, like these little legs. You can stand on that, and then when the ship spawns in, you jump, and then you just like land on the ship. Okay, so that's also an option. Now, regardless of what route you take to get to this portico load zone, you have to make it to that left ledge over there, right? Now, that left ledge, it's a challenge for a lot of players to get there because a lot of people are not used to well lining these very, very long distances. Most people are used to well lining short distances, right? And they're used to well lining for height. So if you're lining for distance, what you need to do is you want to pop your heat as soon as you line. And then the second you pop heat, you're going to dash, jump, dash, dash, glide, dash, right? And your goal is basically while you're doing this transition, you want to minimize the amount of time you have heat rises active. Why is that? Well, the way Warlock Glide works is that if you well line, right? And let me give you an example actually, all right? If you well line right here, notice I basically don't lose any speed, right? I'm going basically as fast as possible the whole time, right? Now watch what happens if I well line and I pop heat and I keep my heat rises glide active for the whole time, right? I'm gonna respawn here, make sure there's no ads, right? And let's say I pop heat, right? Look how slow I become, right? I'm gonna reach this wall and I'm not even gonna take physics damage. That's how slow I become, right? So this is really, really important to know because during this transition, any time you have heat rises popped and you also have your glide active is time that you're killing your speed. So what does that mean? Well, heat rises, the reason why we even pop it to begin with, why do we even pop it if it makes us slower, right? The whole reason we pop heat rises is because if you're on Warlock and you activate your glide more than 3 times, each time you activate your glide, the reactivation cost takes a lot of glide energy away from you. In fact, you can only reactivate your glide like 3 times before it's all gone, right? So let me show you what I mean, right? 1, 2, 3, and then look, I can't press space anymore. I'm falling to my death. So what that means is if you ever want to line for distance, right, and your glide is going to run out, you need heat rises because heat rises allows you to have infinite reactivations, right? So that's the difference. When you're lining really long distances, you want heat rises, but only for very brief times. So the way Warlock Glide works, right? Let's say you're falling from a really great distance. One of the nice things about Warlock Glide and Hunter Jump is that the moment you press spacebar, it instantly stops your speed. It instantly stops you from dropping. So that's why we use heat rises. We can activate it for a very, very short period of time, and that will allow us to stop from dropping, which will allow us to carry our speed without losing too much, carry our height without losing too much speed. So what does that actually look like in practice? Well, let's jump on this pole, line, and you'll see here that I'm activating my glide in extremely short bursts, right? I'm not even going to land on the platform. I'm just going to keep going, right? You see that? So I'm able to go pretty far while keeping my height. And you see how I slowed down a lot less compared to when I lined over to the left and I had my glide active the whole time. So your goal here is basically going to be to double tap your heat rises as often as possible and let your glide be inactive for as long as possible while you have heat rises. So going to the left, this line is a bit challenging because that ledge is practically the same height as this ledge. So you basically can't lose any height, even though the distance is not that long. So let's actually take a look. Let me get my grenade back here. So yeah, let's actually take a look at the second line. So the first line, this one's pretty straightforward, right? No matter where you come from, you're doing the same thing, right? You're just well lining, popping heat instantly, dash, jump, dash, tap, 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 and you make it here. Okay, once you make it here, if you line off ship, you're gonna have like 10 seconds of heat. If you lined off a pole, you'll have like 7 to 8 seconds of heat, right? Now you have two options when you arrive here. You can either do a moving well line, or you can stop yourself by sorting and then re-well line, like aim and then well line again. So if you do a moving well line, I guess it looks a little bit hard for people that haven't done it before, but basically you wanna make sure you land like somewhere around here. Your feet are going to drag, and this is assuming you already have your kinetic or energy weapon out, and then you're gonna pull out your sword and then just do well line inputs, and you're gonna basically do well line inputs as you're dragging your feet across the ground here. So what does it actually look like? Let's actually take a look. So on my way back, I'm not really gonna need heat, so I'm just gonna go back here, right? And let me show you what the moving well line looks like. So you're gonna pop heat, dash, dash, tap 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 tap, and boom, just like that, right? I land on the ground, my feet slide, and then I do my moving well line inputs. So I'm gonna drop off the map here, and we're gonna go back to portico, and then we're gonna complete the transition. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about the second line next, but first we're gonna do a small montage of me getting my grenade energy back. Okay, so now I have my grenade energy back, and now I'm gonna show you what to do at that second line. So let's get on the ship here, and let's go ahead and line here. Also, be careful not to use your dash too quickly here, because you're not gonna have it to pop this line. A big thing that people should know about is something called dash bug, right? When you have heat rises and you're expecting 2 dashes, if you activate your dash right when your previous dash cooldown is about to expire, you're only going to get 1 dash instead of 2. So just be aware of that. You can get dash bugged and you'll suddenly like activate your glide out of muscle memory and just lose all of your speed. So once you get here, regardless of whether you're doing moving well line or normal well line, you just aim at the left side of this cylinder. Right, so you see this big cylinder, you aim at the left side of the cylinder. It doesn't have to be too precise, and then you want a well line, but since you already have heat rises active, do not instantly activate your glide. You're only going to glide when you have dashes or when you're trying to reduce your height from going down too much. So basically what you're going to look like is this. At the start, you're going to go like forward, you're going to go down a little bit when you do your dash glide, and then you're going to allow yourself to drop, allow yourself to drop. Compared to before where you were doing like this, right? You were going like boom, 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 boom. You're like activating your burst a bunch of times. Here, you're just going to activate it every so often because you want to keep more of your speed, but you're dropping this time, right? Because when we were doing that first line, right? When we're doing that first line, point A to point B was like basically straight. Right now, point B is actually a lot further down. So, but point B is also, let me make this more accurate. Point B is also further away. Right? So you want to take this kind of approach, right? Where you're kind of activating your burst ever so often, but here you're doing it like basically like this, right? You're doing it like very, very often. So right here, I'm going to pop heat. I'll show you what I mean. So let me kind of let it run out for a bit, right? I'm going to let it like run down to like 8 seconds or so. And then we're going to line. So we're going to line. I deactivate my glide immediately. And then I just tap every once in a while. Tap, 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 tap. Tap, tap. Normally you'll have enough heat for 2 dashes here, and then you can kind of land on this and then do your final line. Okay, actually I think I explained that pretty well, so I'm just gonna keep going. So once you kind of land on this plate, some people take the top route. You can take the top route, but it's slower. I'm just telling you now, it's slower and requires you turn your camera. It's harder to execute, and also it gets more clogged up there. So I recommend everyone take this bottom plate route. You just get here and you basically well line in the middle of that V. You see that V? You just well line there, and then you turn left. You turn left and you Icarus dash as your body is going through this gate. So right here, because I'm going to crash into the wall, I Icarus dash to the left, and look at this. It sends me right down the middle. It sends me right down the middle, and then I can pull out my sword right here, and then sword here, and then fake skate there. I'm not going to go there because I don't want to activate I don't want to go up the elevator. Okay, so that's basically how that works. Finally, I'm going to explain wall CP, and then that's it. Okay, so we're going to go over here. Right? So some people ask me, you know, Aegis, why does the wall spawn in, right? Why does the wall spawn in? The reason why the wall spawns in is because if you drop too early here, there's a box that you can be in, which spawns in the wall. So you see this pillar, right? The box is basically, if you're behind that pillar and also below this rim, it will spawn in the wall. So let me just go ahead and show you what that means, right? If I go right back here, watch the wall, it'll instantly spawn in. Okay, so what does that mean for you as a runner? Well, that means that when you're doing your route, make sure you don't drop too low. Make sure you only drop once you pass this pillar. Okay, that's basically it for ships. Just as a reminder, practice consistency over everything else. You don't have to be fast. I would rather have you get like, you know, consistent 60s rather than getting like, you know, trying to go for like an extremely fast route every single time. Okay, if you're very confident, you can do that. But for now, I would just, you know, I don't want to rib and, you know, just try to focus on consistency for now. All right, well, that's all for now. Good luck, guys. Good luck with your practice. If you need an example of the route, obviously that's also posted in the channel as well.